Bonjour, this is G, and welcome to Behind the Mic Live, where I interview incredible coaches, visionaries, and thought leaders who are making big rockstar moves in their business. Today, my rockstar guest is Michelle Kempton. She is a leadership coach, a speaker, and a podcast host. So please welcome to Behind the Mic Live, Michelle. Hey, how are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me, G.
Yes, thanks for coming back. On the last show we had, there was some audio issues with StreamYard, so hopefully everyone can hear us now.
Oh, yeah, this is take two. Sorry, I have to put this up because it's okay. Wait.
So yeah, tell people what you're doing there. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So this says a double screen, and it's much easier for me to focus on your face. So I cover up my side of the screen with a piece of paper so that it's like almost like you're sitting in my office with me.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Perfect.
I don't see myself. I just see you.
Thank you. So who is Michelle?
Oh, that's a very profound question. I think there are a lot of ways that I could answer that question, but I think in the context of what we're talking about today, maybe the best way to answer that would be to say, a few things, like maybe a leadership alchemist,
Okay.
a seeker, and a guide for consciousness. I think just as much a student as I am a guide for other people. A mother. I very much identify with that
Yes.
part of myself. I have 3 kids who've been super important for me and taught me probably more than anyone else in my life. And then maybe let's see what else. You know what I would say, like metaphorically, I'm like a space weaver. You know, I think we talked about this before.
Okay.
It's really
Yes.
important for me when I have a room full of people to kind of have them connect. And each time I do an exercise or something, I have them meet someone new, connect with someone new until by the end of the day or even by the end of a few hours, instead of a room full of strangers, it's a room full of shared humanity. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the most important maybe skills, or maybe I could even call it part of my purpose.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you find your voice?
Oh, this is another interesting question. I would say I found my voice by listening. Because I put my voice in service of who I'm listening to. And that's why, when we've talked about the concept of the inner rock star, I come back to this synergy, because so much of what I do has to do with who I'm sitting in front of or standing in front of. So
Yeah.
I think I find what wants to come through in my voice, in you, in your eyes, in your personality, essence, your message. It's like you invoke something in me.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So what would you say is your number one rock star quality?
Well, I think we talked about this before, that I'm still working on the concept of rock star, because I think of myself more as like a conductor. It's more, for me, it's more about looking to bring out the best music in other people. I don't know how to play all these instruments, but I know how to stand in front of them and get the best and get them to harmonize, So
That's perfect. Yeah.
rock star is a different metaphor. And we can talk about how it did serve me recently when I did this project in Bali. And there were ways that I could have stepped even more into it that would have been useful for me. But I would say my biggest rock star quality would probably be something that I'm still learning how to do, but would be to fully own my impact. I think rock stars fully own who they are. They
Yes.
own their impact, and when they walk into a room, you can feel they're completely embodied in who they are. So I would say that although I'm not always in that space, I know how to get into that space.
Yes. And before your trip to Bali, we had a Rockstar Frequency session. So I'd love to know what your takeaways are from that.
Well, there's a few things there, probably. I knew that it was an edge for me, and I was still working. Even at the end of our coaching session, I was still sort of finding my way with the term, with the energy of it. Because again, like when I think about being on a stage, I think, wow, my job is to put the spotlight on other people. It's, it would be more
Mhm.
of a like finding how everybody could be a part of the band rather
Yes,
than me
yes.
being um, the rock star. So the concept was new, and I tell you, like there were a few different moments that it showed up. One was um, when I would come out of my hotel room because at this event, or I guess overall, I was there for 20 days, and there were a few
Mhm.
different moments where I had to work. So there was a 3 day small leadership training. When I say small, it was 20 people. Then there was an event that there was probably about 90 people, and that event was a little bit outside my comfort zone in certain terms of what I normally do. And then there was just the walking around at this hotel where
Right,
I had to be on. And there were a lot of moments when I was having conversations that were, coaching conversations. It wasn't just me chilling at a hotel. So I
right.
think one of the things that served me was looking in the mirror in some moments before I walked out of my hotel room and reminding myself, Michelle, you were chosen to be here. You were chosen for this. So
Yes.
it helped me step into owning why I was there and what I was doing there.
Yes, because the rock star is an attitude. It's like, we're working with the artist for 25 years. They don't wake up saying, "I'm a rock star." They just wake up and do their day, and because they have that level of confidence, everyone else is like, "Wow, that's so cool. You haven't changed your T-shirt in 3 days. That's so cool," like back in the '90s or something. So, I
Yeah.
wanna, talk to you about, your experience in Bali. We talked about this before off camera. What's it like presenting when some of the audience maybe doesn't understand the language as well, and you have to really incorporate
Yeah.
improv really on stage? How
Yeah,
how
well,
how do you
this
do
is
that?
this is where a lot of what we talked about and you were training me in would have been helpful had I been able to apply it fully 100%. So let me
Mm,
explain the contrast between a room full of 20 people and a room full of 90 people.
okay.
In a room full of 20 people, I can go back to that space weaving, right? Like that's my comfort zone. I know
Mhm.
that in those 3 days, there's going to be transformation because I've seen it over and over again for 20 years. When
Mhm.
I got into the room with 90 people, it took me a little while to figure out that a lot of people didn't understand me because there were people in the room who just didn't have the level of English to be able
Okay.
to follow me. So
Okay.
so I could have figured that out in early on in some of the breakout exercises and stuff. I realized, wow, people are not understanding the instructions, and that was the moment for more rock star energy, because what was needed there was more emotional storytelling. So maybe they couldn't understand my
Mhm.
words, but they could feel me. More
Right.
body language, so I could communicate with my body. I didn't have to depend on my voice, leaning into nonverbal communication. And I
Mm.
think we also talked about something, and this is one of the big takeaways I got when we spoke, is we were talking about what works in that part of the world. And I did had the group of 20 leaders that was before the event, and they are the leaders
Mhm.
of the 90 people in the room in the big event,
Mhm.
choreograph a very easy um, dance to the rap song that I took called Ascend. And they
Yes.
did a motion
Yes.
where they made an A on the top of their head, and they said, okay, every time it says ascend, ascend, which was the name of the program, they would
Yes.
put their hands up. And one of the most resonant, sort of unifying, exciting moments was that moment, because it went beyond language, and
Mm.
and everybody was together,
Mhm.
creating something, standing up. Of course, there's something about when people physically get up that
Right.
shifts the energy. But I remember it was at the tail end of the whole event, and I looked out and I thought, wow, this is probably the most memorable moment for everybody. Not what I trained them in, because it was 4 hours, not anything I said, but these moments of feeling like they were a part of something. And
Mm.
that, I think, goes very well with the rock star, because the rock star looks out, and there's a resonance and a vibration that's created. If you think about Coldplay, it's just absolutely
Yes.
incredible what he
Yes.
does. So again, it's more like space weaving. It wasn't me. They weren't looking at me like the star, but I was creating something out there in the room that elevated. And in fact, that event was called Elevate and Energize. That was a moment
Oh,
where I was
wow.
like, oh, there is a
Yes.
feeling of elevation here.
Yeah, well, that's like what we talked about. When you're presenting at that rock star frequency, even if it's above the crowd, you bring the crowd up to that moment,
Yeah,
and having,
exactly.
and especially in that part of the world, having a dance that I think it works probably anywhere in the world that people can join into. They
Yeah,
feel like they're part of it. They're on that frequency
yeah,
with
yeah.
you.
That was
Wow.
definitely the sort of highlight of that moment. In
Yeah.
hindsight, if I could go back and bring
Hmm.
more of the rock star, gee, what
Okay.
I would do is probably talk less. And I mean, I did have them, I realized, okay, it's really important for me to connect people with each other because I know that there are,
Hmm.
um, there's body chemistry that shifts when we
Hmm.
empathize with each other, when we there's serotonin and,
Yes.
there's a feeling that you get when you feel connected with someone. And so I thought, okay, they may not be able to connect with me, but I can connect them with each other. So I found ways to get beyond the challenge that I saw in the first 15 minutes of that event, going, wow, this is not going to go as planned. um, and I think hindsight, I would have done more of that physical movement of
Hmm.
more group things, because I think that that was the most effective way in those circumstances to have impact and have them feel like they were getting something special from the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, and this the thing is too, like even with your favorite rock stars, most people don't remember every word or every lyric they sing or don't sing. So if someone forgets a lyric, unless they bring it up, no one.
No one
But you
knows.
have that feeling, right? You have that feeling, and you were Chris Martin on stage there, Michelle. You had the
Well,
audience in your, that's
well, yeah,
awesome.
I think it was. I'm not sure that I could compare myself to Chris Martin on stage, but I could look across and go, okay, this is a good moment. This is something
Yeah,
that will
yeah,
stay in people's minds and hearts. And they may remember that I created it, and they may not. That's not the important thing for me.
right.
Um, I think one of the other things that was a big learning at that event, because it didn't go as planned, was how I got back to my center, because I got frazzled a few times looking out into the crowd going, this is not, there were a lot of times where I just saw confusion on people's faces because they just didn't understand.
Okay.
And the way I kind of got back to my center, and I think this is
Hmm.
really important, probably for a rock star too, or anyone on stage, like maybe
Oh
a
yeah.
comedian when they get heckled or something, like how do you find your way back to
Yes.
yourself?
Yes.
And what helped me was to go into like, why am I here? What do I want for these people? Like really a very um heartfelt,
Hmm.
um kind of coming back to what was my intention. And even though this isn't unfolding the way I thought, um, my intention is so heartfelt here. I want, great things for this group of people. And that helped me find my way back to this. Okay, it's very imperfectly human what's happening right now, but
Right.
what's very pure is where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
want. Like, and that gave me strength. That got me back to my center when things got a little, for me,
Yeah.
chaotic. Yeah.
And the thing is, though, it may be getting chaotic for you on stage. The audience has no idea. They don't. They have no idea. It's all up here, and then you get centered and back to that
Perhaps.
frequency.
I
Yeah.
would say in this case, there's another level of understanding that they had no idea, because in some moments they had no idea what I was saying. So, so
Well.
yeah, yeah. But I think that overall, the whole program and project was incredibly
Yeah.
successful. So even though that wasn't what I expected it to be, and maybe it wasn't what a lot of people expected, in
Hmm.
the whole package of what happened in the 20
Yeah.
days that I was there, it was, it was part of a bigger recipe, and the whole recipe worked.
Yes, and that goes to the why. What we talked about, your why they brought you there, and your why. And like when people look back on it after 20 days, they're not going to remember a technical thing here or there. They're going to have a feeling, and it's that feeling that they walk away with and go, "Wow, I feel great." And they
Yeah,
may not even know why, but they just because
yeah,
when you're on that frequency, it's just so powerful. So I want to talk to you about your programs. You've worked with the Olympic programs and how you train professional athletes. Because when I say rock star, I mean it could be actors, it could be athletes, comedians. It's anyone who has to operate at this high level for a certain period of time. And if something happens, the audience has no idea. They had a bad play. They just forget about it, move on to the next play. How do
Yeah.
you're working with
Well,
professional athletes?
so
Yeah.
first of all, to clarify, although I have worked with many professional athletes, I've worked a lot
Hmm.
more with the people who coach those
Oh
athletes.
yes, the
So what
coaches.
I've
Yes.
done over years is train coaches and trainers who work in the world of sports and elite sports in kind of in the coach approach, not the
Yes.
sports coach approach, but the coach approach, which is more about emotional and social intelligence and
Mm.
how to tap into human potential, giving people,
Hmm.
you know, these trainers, what they need to do is actually help their athletes become more mentally fit. So it's really like the inner game we're working with, the
Yes.
dialogue that goes off when you miss a goal or when you don't come in, you know, first place when you thought you were. And it's all the mental game. So
Yeah.
that's where I came in the world of elite sports, was helping them more with how to have transformational conversations, how to bring awareness to what's going on in my internal operating system that's getting in
Hmm.
the way of me being, you know, the best athlete I can be.
Right. And for leaders embracing 2025, what are like 3 tips you have for leaders to really get into that same mindset that you train the coaches to get the athletes in?
Oh, wow. So I wasn't going to go there, but okay, if we go
Okay.
there with the same mindset as an athlete, we can go to mental fitness, and then that could take us
Hmm.
to mindfulness. I think
Okay.
it's the same thing. I really think that the secret sauce for everything, G, and this
Hmm.
was my like breakthrough learning, you know, like 22 years ago, is presence. Is having
Yes.
control of where your attention is in every moment. And if we go back to sports, it's the same thing. The inner game of golf, the inner game of tennis, which is sort of the birth of modern coaching as we know it today.
Hmm.
John Whitmore, who was a race car driver, all of these people were realizing that when you're fully present in the here and now, you have access to all of these resources, and you're much more effective in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's leading or playing a sport. So for me,
Mm.
it all comes down to, are you able to be fully present in this moment? Notice when your mind jumps to the future or to the past, and bring it back quickly. The
Right.
metaphor that I use is, it's like training a wild horse. You know, your brain or
Hmm.
your mind will run off in all sorts of different directions, and very often a negative one. And that's why I speak of mental fitness, because being mentally fit is noticing, wow, we have a negativity bias as human beings. I just had a negative thought. Can I come back and actually challenge, is that thought true? And if
Right.
it is true, you know, then what can I do about it? And if I can't
Right.
do anything about it, can I surrender to this moment and accept and let go and come back
Mm.
to 100% here and now with all of me? And that's probably, to me, connected to the rock star too, because I think a true rock star, the reason we
Hmm.
feel them on the stage and they resonate so powerfully, is because they are 100% in the here and now,
Yes. Yeah, we call it in the pocket.
in the pocket, right? You
In
could
the
call it
pocket.
in the zone, in
In
the
the
flow.
zone, in the on the frequency, like there's so many
Yeah,
different, but it's that when you're on stage or you're on the field, and even if you, like you said, you miss that goal, you just have to immediately go, okay, well now I know what not to do, and
yeah.
get right into it, just like a lead singer that forgets the
Amen.
lyrics, or because it is what I saw in 25 years is that it's very easy to get on autopilot.
Yeah,
And the thing is, people that, especially bands that have been touring for 20, 30 years, it's easy to get on autopilot. They don't have to look at, they know the notes, they know the, and they can literally, because I've had artists tell me this, zone out, still
yeah,
perform great. The audience has no idea, but zone out. But when you bring that back to center, and they go, and sometimes, and they would tell me this, they'd be like, sometimes I forgot where I was. I forgot I was singing. I
yeah.
forgot. You get so in tune. So I'd love to know more about, what is it, what do you enjoy about working with your clients, and what are like for speaking events in 2025, who are some of your ideal clients?
Well, first of all, speaking events are challenging for me again because, and I've done them. When I stand on
Hmm.
stage and I just talk for half an hour, remember I said
Hmm.
I find my voice by listening to yours. Those are
Right.
very challenging for me because I much prefer a co-creative process. You know,
Mm.
I don't know if I mentioned this when we talked the first time, but I love the poet David White. And in fact, I just saw an interview with him yesterday where, well, what I know about him is that he would talk about his poetry readings,
Mhm.
that he wouldn't prepare, that he would go, and once he got there, he would feel the room and he would feel
Mm.
what was called for. And the poem that he would recite would be what felt like the room needed, or
Oh,
what
wow.
was co-created in that moment. So that's very much how I think of leadership and my work. So that makes it, when I think about speaking, I'm only half of the equation, in my opinion. That so
Yes.
for me, it's all about being in a room with people who are present, so that we can
Mhm.
all powerfully co-create something together, because that is really important. We all need to be here and now
Yes.
for
So
that to happen.
how can people work with you?
Well, how can people work with me? You mean
Like,
in what different
to
capacities?
get in contact with you, to work with you, like, what is,
Well, so I have
yeah.
a web page and I'm on
Yep.
LinkedIn.
Yep.
Most of my work is leadership. I work with organizations and leaders, basically in what's being called for the future. So it's a much more in human-centric approach, more
Yeah.
emotional and social intelligence. Um, Also more self-leadership. And maybe I
Mm.
can come back to the question you asked. I think one of the most important things for me is leading by example. You know, being the first one to be vulnerable, being the first one to be aware that everything you do and say is modeling, hopefully, the behaviors you want other people to emulate. And so I think that, yeah, if we come back to rock star and being on stage, I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
I am the first person to share a story that might be vulnerable or very human, to create safety in the room, to
Yeah.
invite other people to do the same, to sort of take off our masks and our armor and be
Mm.
vulnerable together. I think I teach leaders to do that, and I do that myself. I try to be the first one to model being very human with people. Because for me, I think if I talk about sort of the two most important pieces that are present in my work, it would be
Mhm.
authenticity
Yep.
and presence. How
Yeah.
do we keep our attention in the here and now, and how do we create enough safety in the room to fully step into who we are? And it's not about everybody loves each other. It's actually authenticity, which is like a huge range there of the good and the bad and the ugly. It's all of who we are. And I think there's no higher
Wow.
vibration than the
Yeah.
the, the feeling of authenticity in a room.
Yeah, and what you're doing is you're bringing the audience in to share an experience, and
Yeah,
that is
it's
very powerful, and it can be a different experience for everybody in the room, like what you're talking about, or the workshop can create different thoughts, but everybody's on the same frequency, in the pocket, in the groove. There's so many
exactly,
ways. That's very
exactly.
powerful. What's that feeling like when you're standing on stage and you just know that everyone's on that just same
Yeah,
frequency? Yeah.
it's a metaphorical stage, right? Because I'm never standing on stage. But I think that for me, it is, like I said, it's the secret to everything. If you get a team in that flow or in that zone, um,
Mm,
suddenly the collective consciousness just goes up. If you
yeah,
get a room full of people, then you have this feeling of shared humanity, and suddenly people are more connected to their hearts. They're more generous with helping others. It brings out the best in us. And a
yeah,
leader as well, a leader has to know how to be very human and interact with people, not as a means to an end, but because you care about people. Because at the end of our lives, I always tell leaders, at the end of your life, you're not going to remember the organization you worked for. You're going to remember the impact you had on people's lives and the impact they had on yours. That's all that matters in the end.
yes, yes. So before we go, I have to know, who is your favorite rock star?
Oh my goodness. I have so many favorite rock stars. Um, Gosh, I like Van Morrison. For
Okay.
me, again, it's the same thing as leadership. When I talk about a powerful leader knows how to speak from here, from down here. When
Mm,
I like
yes,
rock stars where I can feel their soul. I can feel
yes.
their heart and soul in their music. I like Coldplay, because I think that he's a great example of somebody who is fully present on stage, and he's
Yeah.
authentic, and
Yeah.
he knows how to create a high vibration in thousands of people. I
Yes.
just saw him in an interview where he was talking about how he had to learn how to reconcile who he was on stage and who he was off stage. So that was something we talked about
Yes.
in terms of Bali. One of the things that was great about Bali is there was such a high vibration in the entire
Mhm.
environment the whole time that it allowed me to be in that authentic, loving space the whole time. So I think that we're also very influenced by the environment we're moving around in.
Wow, that's such a great example of like, yeah, I mean, and I got to tour with those guys for a while, and you're right. I mean, there's just there's a lot of people that perform on stage, but you go to a Coldplay show and you feel like you're on stage, no matter
Yeah,
where the seat is. Like the
exactly.
audience is literally singing along. Everyone's on the same frequency.
Right.
It's indescribable,
It is
and
indescribable.
yeah,
And that's what I mean by the environment, because
yeah,
surely Chris Martin is experience an exchange of energy, the audience to him and him back to the
yep,
audience. But
yep,
if you go out into a room where there's hostility, or people are not uh, rising to the vibration that you're coming
right, right.
from, it's a completely different experience, right? So there's a synergy and there's an exchange that happens, and that's why I think it's so important for people in the room, whether it's a concert hall or a leadership room, to
Hmm.
be present and open and willing to let the alchemy happen.
Yeah. So what would you say is your number one goal for 2025 that you want to share publicly, obviously? Just
Mhm.
what's
My number one goal for 2025, I think it would go back to what I want for everyone else is, be as present as I can be in my day to day, because I know
yes.
that when I'm fully present, it's the best version of myself, and continue to be authentic in the full range of what that means. And that means sometimes getting it really wrong,
Mhm.
or being in lots of different emotions. So I think authenticity and presence.
Yes, and this is very perfect timing because in a world where everything is going AI, the more human
Yeah.
you are when you talk to your audience, when you go on camera, when you know, are on LinkedIn, I think that's what's really going to stand out more than this perfection.
Yeah, I think you're well,
Yeah.
without a doubt, without a
Yeah.
doubt. I think that we're all hungry for it.
Yeah.
We're all in need of it, and I think you're right. The more we have AI sort of taking over a lot of processes and even jobs, I
Yeah.
think that there'll be even more hunger for imperfection. I think people will actually, because AI is so perfect, it has
Yes.
us be hungry for the imperfection of the human being.
Yeah, that's spoken so well. So I want everyone to follow and get in contact with Michelle here on LinkedIn. Check out her website, kct.es. And I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank all my amazing rock star guests, everyone who's tuned in. This is episode 30. This is the last show of season 1. Going to kick off season 2 in 2025. Thank you again, Michelle. This has been so incredible. I can't wait to hear more I want to talk more about Bali as well off camera sometime, because I know we talked about a lot in the coaching session that
Yeah.
we could talk about. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you
thank you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you so much for your support before Bali. Thank you for anyone who's listening out there for being present with us today. And I also have a podcast called Leadership Game Changers.
Oh yes, yes. Check out your show. All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, everybody. Have a great holiday. Until next time. Ciao.
Bye.
Cheers.